Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. We have already studied first two essays. Today we are going to study our third essay, that is Whistling of Birds by D.H. Lawrence, David Herbert Lawrence. So in this essay he has used a lot of the symbols of nature, and many of the symbols has been used. Everywhere in the fields and under the hedges lay the ragged remains of lapwings, starlings, thrushes, redwings, innumerable ragged bloody flocks of birds when the flesh was eaten by invisible beasts of prey. So in the very first paragraph you can see that death has been depicted and everything is fixed. There is no movement, and there is the scene is about the winter, and winter is a symbol for death, for despair. Then quite suddenly one morning the change came. The wind went to the south, came off the sea warm and soothing. In the afternoon there were little gleams of sunshine, and the doves began without interval, slowly and awkwardly, to coo. The doves were cooing, though with a laboured sound, as if they were still winter-struck. Nevertheless, all the afternoon they continued their noise in the mild air before the frost had thawed off the road. At evening the wind blew gently, still gathering a bruising quality of frost from the hard earth. Then in the yellow gleamy sunset wild birds began to whistle faintly in the blackthorn thicket of the stream bottom. Birds started chirping, wind started blowing, and these are a little signals of life. It was startling and almost frightening after the heavy silence of frost. How could they sing at once when the ground was thickly strewn with the torn carcasses of birds? Out of the evening came the uncertain silvery sound that made one's soul start alert, almost with fear. How could the little silver bugles sound the really so swiftly in the soft air when the earth was yet bound? Yet the birds continued their whistling, rather dimly and brokenly, but throwing the threads of silver germinating noise into the air. It was almost a pain to realize so swiftly the new world, but the birds omitted even first part of the announcement. Their cry was only a faint blind. So in these two paragraphs the birds have started singing in broken voice. Their whistling was so faint, it's strange that they have started making noise in front of the dead bodies of birds laying in front of them. But reading between the lines, one can witness that life has started to show its color. And D.H. Lawrence had foregrounded the arrival of life, the arrival of spring, in the meantime that the winter is about to meet its end. There is another world, the winter is gone, there is a new world of spring. The voice of the turtle is heard in the land, but the flesh shrinks from so sudden a transition. Surely the call is premature, while the clouds are still frozen and the ground is littered with the remains of wings. Yet we have no choice. In the bottoms of impenetrable black thorn, each evening and morning now out flickers a whistling of birds. Where does it come from? The song of so long a cruelty? How can they make it up so quickly? But it bubbles through them. They are like little wellheads, little fountains head. Hence the spring trickles and bubbles forth. It is not of their own doing. In their throats the new life distills itself into sound. It is the rising of silvery sap of a new summer, gurgling itself forth. So after this so much destruction comes the spring. The change in direction of the wind gives rise to the singing of birds. The change is so abrupt. It seems as spring was crawling under the snow. Unless the earth lay chalked and killed and winter mortified, the deep understanding required. They only wait for the ponderous encumbrance of the old order to give way, yield in the thaw, and there they are. A silver realm at once. Under the surge of ruin, unmitigated winter, lies the silver potentially of fall blossom. One day the black tide must spend itself and fade back. Then all suddenly appears the crocus hovering triumphant in the rear, and we know the order has changed. There is new regime, sound of a new order. It is no use anymore to look at the torn remnants of birds that lie exposed. It is no longer any use remembering the sullen thunder of frost and the intolerable pressure of cold upon us, for whether we will or not, they are gone. The choice is not ours. We may remain wintry and destructive for a little longer if we wish it, but the winter is gone out of us, and willy-nilly our hearts sing a little at sunset. So writer has tried to bring the attention of the people to the happiness that spring has brought. No one can see the remnants of birds or dead skeleton because they are happy in their own life, and they wanted to enjoy the spring season, and they should not look at the remnants. But the writer has urged the people to not look at the destruction that has been done to them. Even whilst we stare at the ragged horror of the birds, scattered broadcast, part eaten, the soft uneven cooing of the pigeon ripples from the outhouses, and there is a faint silver whistling in the bushes come twilight. No matter, we stand and stare at the torn and unsightly ruins of life. We watch the very mutilated columns of winter retreating under our eyes, yet in our ears are the silver buckles of a new creation advancing on us from behind. We hear the rolling of the soft and happy drums of the dove. We may not choose the world. We have hardly any choice for ourselves. We follow with our eyes the bloody and horrid line of march of extreme winter as it passes away, but we cannot hold back the spring. We cannot make the birds silent, prevent the bubbling of the wood pigeons. We cannot stay the fine world of silver fecund creation from gathering itself and taking place upon us. Whether we will or no, the different tree will soon be giving off perfume, the lamps dancing on 2 feet, the Clendians will twinkle all over the ground. There will be a new heaven and new earth. We have not chosen the spring or winter. It's the cycle of the world. This cycle has to repeat itself again and again. The writer has described the spring and winter as they are moving in a cycle. Spring shows life while winter shows death. They are incompatible with each other. They are completely opposite to each other. Nobody can take the place of the other. As he is trying to bring our focus towards life and death. Life and death are incompatible with each other, for it is in us as well as without us. Those who may follow the columns of winter in their retreat from the earth. Some of us, we have no choice. The spring is within us. The silver fountain begins to bubble under our breast. There is gladness in spite of ourselves, and on the instant we accept the gladness. The first day of change or whistles an unusual interrupted, a fragment that will augment itself imperceptibly, and this in spite of the extreme bitterness of the suffering, in spite of the myriads of torn dead. Such a long winter, and the frost only broke yesterday. Yet it seems already we cannot remember it. It is strangely remote, like a fog of darkness. It is as unreal as a dream in the night. This is the morning of reality when we are ourselves. This is natural and real, the glimmering of a new creation that stirs in us and about us. We know there was winter long fearful. We know the earth was strangled and mortified. We know the body of life was torn and scattered broadcast. But what is this retrospective knowledge? It is something extraneous to us, extraneous to this that we are now, and what we are, and what it seems we always have been. Is this quickening, lovely silver plasma of pure creativity? All the mortification and tearing, yes, it was upon us, encompassing us. It was like a storm or a mist or a falling uh, from a height. It was entangled with us like bats in our hair, driving us mad, but it was never really our innermost self within. We were always apart. We were this limpid fountain of silver, then quiescent, rising and breaking now into the flooring. It is strange that utter incompatibility of death with life. Whilst there is death, life is not to be found. It is all death, one overwhelming flood, and then a new tide rises, and it is all life, a fountain of silvery blissfulness. It is one or the other. We are for life and we are for death, one or the other, but never in our essence, both at once. Werther has interwoven the idea of both the seasons in a very beautiful manner. According to him, death and life are completely opposite in essence, in spirit. When there is winter, there is no summer, but when there is summer, there is no winter, and they are very different in their essence. But when there is summer, there is no winter, and he is trying to explain that when there is no when there is life, there is no death, and when there is death, there is no life. Death cannot eradicate the colors of life. When it's the time of life to prosper and flourish, death takes us, and all is torn redness, passing into darkness. Life rises, and we are faint, fine jets of silver running out to blossom. All is incompatible with all. There is the silver speckled, incandescent mean glowing with heat, lovely thrush whistling for song in the blackthorn thicket. How is he to be connected with the bloody, feathered unsightliness of the thrush remnants just outside the bushes? There is no connection. They are not to be referred the one to the other. Where one is, the other is not. In the kingdom of death, the silvery song is not. But where there is life, there is no death. No death, whatever, only silver gladness perfect the other world. The blackbird cannot stop his song, neither can the pigeon. It takes place in him, even though all his race was yesterday destroyed. He cannot mourn, or be silent, or adhere to the dead. Of the dead he is not, since life has kept him. The dead must bury their dead. Life has now taken hold on him and tossed him into the new ether of a new firmament, where he burst into song as if he were combustible. What is the past? Those others? Now he is tossed clean into it, the new across the untranslatable difference. Death and life are two most essential and inevitable phenomena of nature. One creates, the other destroys. One is colorful, the other is colorless. One is life, the other is death. And in this paragraph, he's trying to tell us that the blackbird has started chirping at the arrival of the spring. The dead bodies cannot stop the living birds from singing or whistling. Death cannot stop the onrush of life. The writer has expressed both the destruction of winter and pleasure of spring in a very beautiful manner. In his song is heard the first brokenness and uncertainty of the transition. The transit from the grip of death into new being is a death from death, and its sheer psychosis, a dizzy agony, but only for a second. The moment of trajectory, the passage from one state to the other, from the grip of death to the liberty of newness. In a moment, he is the kingdom of wonder, singing at the center of new creation. The bird did not hang back, he did not cling to his death and his dead. There is no death, and the dead have buried their dead. Tossed into chasm between two worlds, he lifted his wings in dread and found himself carried on the impulse. We are lifted to be cast away into the new beginning. Under our hearts the fountain surges to toss us forth. Who can thwart the impulse that comes upon us? It comes from the unknown upon us, and it behoves us behoves us to pass delicately and exquisitely upon the subtle new mind from heaven, conveyed like birds' unreasoning migration from death to life. So, in this chapter, you have seen that spring has brought color in the life of the people. D.H. Lawrence has used the symbols from the nature in this essay for death. The symbols that are being used here are autumn, snow, frost, no whistling, no colors, dead leaves, uh, sun is about to set, and these are the symbols that are used for death. And in literature you must have seen that night and darkness are used for death. And for the spring season, whistling of birds, summer, player activities, daylight, sun is rising. These are the symbol, these are the things that show the hope, and these things show the spring. And this lesson has been written very beautifully, in which he has uh, described that winter and summer winter and spring, cannot stay at the same place at the same time. They are moving in a cycle. When one thing goes, the other comes. When one completes a cycle, the other comes. Same is the way same happens with the death and life. Both the things, death and life, cannot live at the same time. They are moving in a cycle. One has to go in order so that the other can come at that place. So you have to do the exercise of this lesson and start preparing for your exams. Thank you.